Okay, hello. Let's start this session. I've checked, hopefully, that everything works, that the technical glitches are out of the way. There are probably more coming. That's just the nature of things. You just have to try, repeatedly try in short iterations. This is what we do in agility, right? So this is my trying in short iterations, and yes, there will be problems. There will be issues coming up, but I think we can solve that. So let's talk about agility now.
Move out! Agile! Hostile!
I hope this time it works with the sound. Let's become agile. And the topic here is that what exactly makes us agile? What is agile? That's a long discussion that we can have all day long. But what makes us agile? What makes a team agile? What makes a company agile? Before we dive into that, the hint is that it's not frameworks, okay? It's not the frameworks. I love frameworks, and they are great tools. I love frameworks as much as a rock star loves his guitars. And while a rock star loves his guitars, he knows damn well that the guitars themselves do not turn him into a rock star. You could buy guitars all day long, the most expensive guitars in the world, and there are people out there who do that, and they don't become rock stars. The same is true for agile frameworks. You can get the most fancy, expensive, or elaborate agile framework, and it will not make you agile. By itself, it's still a great tool. It's still awesome. There are awesome frameworks. There are also less awesome frameworks out there, but hey, most of the stuff is very well thought out and put together by smart people who had success with it. A very common framework, not a scaling framework, but just for teams, for agile teams, is Scrum. That's an example. And I love Scrum. I learned it from Ken Schwaber himself. I love it. It's not perfect for every use case, but it's great for more use cases than you would think. You just have to listen to Joe Justice, who worked with Bill Gates and worked with Tesla, to understand that he built cars with Scrum. Not Tesla, but Joe Justice with his company. He had a car company that was building cars in sprints. Beautiful. So it's applicable to more circumstances than you might think. But again, to repeat, Scrum or any Agile framework is not what makes you Agile. It's not the fancy guitar that makes you a rock star. And today I want to talk about what is more likely to make you Agile. What's actually behind that? What makes or breaks agility? Because if you don't think about that, if you don't do it, then no framework in the world will help you. It's like the person buying a fancy guitar, never practicing, never playing in front of an audience, and still expecting to become a rock star. We have to know what that practicing and playing in front of an audience, playing through dirty, empty clubs until you finally make it. What's the equivalent in becoming an agile organization, an agile company, an agile business? And the reasoning why so many companies nowadays want to be agile. I started this more than 20 years ago. I've worked with agile methods for over 20 years now. And back then, it was a developers thing. It was the people on the teams who wanted to do that. Management didn't want to hear anything about agile. Nobody wanted to hear that. And then came along so many valuable companies, the most valuable companies in the world, like an Apple, like an Amazon, a Google, a Tesla, whatever. Really successful companies. And they are all agile. And now every other company wants a piece of the cake. Like, if that's what agility can do, then yes, go for it. Please give us agility. And so that's the reasoning why so many want to become agile. They just see that it works somehow. They don't know how. This is where we as agile coaches come in. And I hope that I have some Scrum Masters and agile coaches in the audience today. It's important that we understand we are the crucial people helping them to get from what they want, the understanding that agility is what they need, to really making it work for them, to helping them get there. They have to do it on their own, but we are the coaches. We get them there. We help them to get there. And for that, we have to have a solid understanding of what makes agility work different for every company, for every person, how they can get there. And by the way, for agile coaches, this is what we look into today. I built an entire agile coach education program. So if you're interested in that, here's the link briefly. I'm going to hide it again so you don't see it. So if you're interested in that, I discuss a lot more about this in that program. But let's, and by the way, before I dive into the thing that really makes you agile, what keeps you from becoming agile, if you use agile frameworks and still think, why are we not agile? This is probably it. Please use the chat. I even show the chat. I tried to show the chat in the stream here so that I can get the messages from LinkedIn, from YouTube Live. And I just want to test this. This is like a technical test for me, because now I have a different way to stream it to LinkedIn. And so if you comment, I should see that in my Discord. By the way, the Discord is something, a private community of agile practitioners. If you're interested in that, just let me know. I should see the messages there. I should see them appear here, and I hope that it works. And you could help me if you just said hello, or hello from wherever you are. Brazil, San Francisco, whatever. Thank you for that. Now, let me, and of course you can ask questions in the chat. Let me take you to my Miro board, because this board is just a tiny part of what's part of the Agile Coach Education Program. And I will show you the link in a few minutes if you're interested in that. It's really how to become an awesome, valuable Agile coach. It's just part of that, and this is part of the foundations of agility. we have to understand what really makes people agile. And you see no framework on this page. There's no framework. Because, again, frameworks are great tools, but they are not what makes us agile. And let's start with something that most coaches are familiar with. This is the McGregor model. And if you're not familiar with it, no problem. This is exactly why this is the foundations of agility. This is, I can even start earlier, and I think I have I even have a history lesson. Let me briefly jump into that and see if I can give you that. Don't want to dive deep into history, but maybe that's... So all of that, you can learn that in the Agile Coach Education Program. This is just a small thing here. So the history is usually boring, but it's interesting. This is Mr. Taylor, Mr. Frederick Winslow Taylor. This is the guy who, without wanting to do any bad, I don't think he meant it badly, did a lot of harm to today's management techniques. He was the guy 130 years ago. He was the first one to really think about management in a structured and scientific way, really putting it to the test and not just having it like being a boss and somehow bossing people around. And what he did is he gave us scientific management, and he was very successful with it, like really productivity boost. And much of the stuff we had, much of the production increase is due to him. Like the fort building the conveyor belt and then the assembly line production, that's also connected to Mr. Taylor. And also the worst stuff that we saw during the last century, like 2 world wars and a lot of other wars, the production of war material, this was also a lot terrorism. But that's not his fault. He's not... The thing is, things changed since then. And people were already protesting his way of saying that managers think, people execute. So it was basically splitting the work between the thinking manager and then just basically giving their body strength, their labor strength to the company, but turning their brains off. Workers. Managers think, workers use their muscles. Managers use brains, workers use muscles. Now that made some sense in the world back then. And still people were protesting because there was a lot of backlash in kind of this optimization mania and let's not get into that. But back then it kind of worked. You could do that. Certain people think, and then other people just tighten a screw or something. They don't know what they build. If they build, a car, a fridge, whatever, they don't know it. They just tighten the screw. That's just their job. They don't have to think. But if you really think about it, splitting the managers have the brain and the workers have the muscles, the body. How does the world look like today? Do you really use your muscles at work? Some people still do. But frankly, many workplaces are office work. We work with our brains, not with our muscles. Yes, we use our body to type on the keyboard and do stuff, but where the actual work happens is in our brains. We solve problems constantly. We need to be creative, innovative, solve new problems. So we cannot split between a manager using their brain and then the worker using only their muscles and not thinking. That doesn't work anymore. So that's a reason why we have to move away from that. Then It's all the things that we understand that humans, and this is in German because it's a German course that I'm also giving. Like I do that in English and in German, but this is the German slides. I just noticed. didn't even notice while talking about it. So this is view of the human being. We understand much better what motivates humans today. There was a lot of scientific studies in the middle of the last century, and it started from there. I'm going to get to that. And the world is more complex. We know that as agile coaches. It's a VUCA world. It's more uncertain. It's more connected. It's more complex. Back then, if you had a steel mill in Pittsburgh, it was pretty much independent of what happens in China or in Europe, for that matter. Yeah, this got connected to Europe a little later, but it was basically mostly independent. You could neglect that. Today, you cannot. If there's something happening in China, we feel the impact in Europe and in the US a few days later, if not immediately. Okay? Ships don't arrive, the supply chains are disconnected, and things are just much more complex. So from that little history lesson, let's move back to that. So this is McGregor. McGregor noticed the problem with scientific management, that if managers think and people just use their muscles and not think, that works in certain cases, but there is other type of work, creative work, like designers, musicians, marketing people, creatives, people using their mind. Today we call them knowledge workers. Knowledge workers, they don't use their body to do the work. They have to think. So it suddenly it becomes much harder to control them and manage them in the same way that you did with workers at the assembly line. And by the way, today we have workers at the assembly line. Look at Tesla or something. But these are mostly thinking workers. These are knowledge workers. Yes, they do physical work, but they design, they innovate, they think. This is most of the part of their work. And then the assembly is mostly, the standard assembly is done by robots, but the assembly they do is just trying new stuff, innovating, seeing whether what they thought up really works. So it's more that kind of work, even though we see them at the assembly line. So more and more is knowledge work today. And the thing that McGregor found is that you could use two management theories depending on what type of work you have and what people. So management theory X is basically it's an understanding of how humans work. It's management theory X says people are inherently lazy. They are lazy, they are trying to avoid work, they are trying to maximize free time. It's just a biological thing that you try to conserve energy. And if it's not in the interest of your survival, you're not going to do it. You're going to try to do as little work as possible and save energy. That's the view of the human being from Taylorism. That's management theory X. And if you understand people in that way, if you think that people fundamentally try to do as little as possible, you need to, if you want to get them to do something at work that is different from their natural drives, like eating, reproducing, building a house or safety. If you want them to do something else, like write computer code or build a car for others, then you would have to give them something. You have to incentivize them. You have to dangle a carrot. This is the image here. You have to dangle a carrot in front of them to make them, to motivate them to do something. That's the understanding. If you fundamentally believe that people are lazy and are trying to avoid work, there's no judgment involved in that, then the only way to get them to do something is to dangle a carrot in front of them. Or the opposite, threaten them. But hopefully we don't do that a lot anymore. Some still do it, but it's just the same thing. So carrots and sticks. Yeah, you could threaten them or you could incentivize them. And this is actually how many management systems today work. Management Theory X. This is how many companies work. If you think about bonus systems, if you think about promotions, about career path, it's all that carrot that they dangle in front of you. A manager says, okay, if you make these numbers, if you achieve that, you're going to get that bonus, or you're going to get promoted, or you can advance in your career. So it's that thinking. That's embedded. That's the Tayloristic mindset and the view of the human being, frankly. The view of human beings as lazy, fundamentally lazy, that is embedded in many organizations today. In the way in the bonus system, in the promotion system, in the hierarchy, in so many things. And also, if you know people are lazy, you cannot simply dangle the carrot, you also have to check them. You check on them. You have to make sure they deliver the quality, because they will, if you don't check, then they will do as little as possible to get away with that, to maximize their free time or their leisure time. That, to be clear, is not the view of a human being in the agile world. This is also not my personal understanding how human beings work. This is also not the understanding we have since the 1950s and onwards. It took some time for people to understand that this is not true. But nowadays we know it's different. So McGregor also had a different management technique for these creative design people, musicians, artists, marketing, creative thinkers. Because what people found out is that dangling a carrot doesn't work. Ask a musician to write a hit song or a marketing guy to write to create a successful advertisement. If you tell them that they will get, I don't know, a bonus, $10,000, if they, by the end of the week, have a successful ad campaign, it will not make them work better or faster. It might have them work harder, whatever that means, but it will not be more successful. It will have the opposite effect. It will reduce creativity and innovation. Yes, that person, that marketer will deliver something, but it will be mediocre at best. Usually, unless you're lucky. The reason goes deep into psychology, and I don't want to elaborate on all that. That's also part of the Agile Coach Education Program that you can, if you want to be part of that, there's much more about psychology that Agile coaches need to understand to really help businesses become agile and successful with it. So it threatens people. If you actually, and I think I have that, where do I have that? Here, this is incentives. If you incentivize people, creativity goes down. It's narrow thinking. It's a biological thing that it just, your brain goes into that fight or flight mode. If you have deadlines, if you have a carrot dangling in front of you, if you're stressed, your creative parts of the brain shut down. It's a survival mechanism. It's just biology. It's how our brains work. It shuts down. It reduces creativity if you dangle that carrot or if you set that deadline. Now, I hear people tell me that deadlines help them all the time to get stuff done, and that's true. If you set these deadlines yourself, or the team sets their own deadlines. But if it's given from the outside with the understanding that people are inherently lazy, and if we put pressure on them, then they will work better, then it doesn't help. It has the opposite effect of what you want. And so McGregor said, these creative people have to be managed differently. You have to not dangle a carrot in front of them. You have to not use the sticks to threaten them. You have to leave them alone. Give them more freedom. Then they will work better. Give them a clear goal, leave them alone. Now, for some time after that, the two things, or I don't even know if sometime they existed. Because what we quickly found out is this view of the human being, this as lazy and only being able to be motivated to do work by extrinsic motivation. This is what we call that carrot, giving them, promising a bonus, a promotion, or whatever, is wrong. Nobody is like that. We are all these creative people. We are born like that. You just have to look at children. So we are born like that. We are intrinsically motivated. We want to do things because things are there. We want to solve a problem because the problem exists. We want to climb a mountain because it's there. We don't need carrots and sticks. Yes, we learn through our life, sometimes from early childhood on, sometimes through the education system, sometimes through the jobs we did in the past. We learn this system to follow the carrot and fear the stick. And we learn that behavior so deeply that it's sometimes hard to find our roots again. And this is one of the crucial points in agile transformations. Even if we are all intrinsically motivated to do stuff, and we don't need to be incentivized. You don't need to dangle a carrot or threaten us. And I've seen companies, there was this, I think it was Walmart, where they, was it there? That they started firing the 10 or 20% low performers every year. So this is the worst. This is the worst thing you can do. And they found out. I don't think they do it anymore. Some consultancies still seem to do it. But I hope they are not. I didn't check. So that doesn't work. We are all intrinsically motivated. But if we learned to do it like that, we have to. It's so ingrained. It's almost instinctively. It's not an instinct, but it's just learned behavior. And we have to unlearn it. And it takes time. And during an agile transformation, management often expects things to change within 3 to 6 months. But for people to unlearn habits they've never reflected on and used for the past decades, sometimes from early childhood on, it's hard. It takes time. It takes trust, and it takes a lot of time. And if companies don't provide that time, or if we agile coaches don't make room for that during an agile transformation, then we will have a problem. Then we will have a lot of backlash. And in another live session, I think I talked about resistance to change and people who are fiercely resisting agile transformations. And these people, in my understanding, I said it in that other live session, I think you can still find it here on LinkedIn, that these are, once they understand what agility is about, they often become the greatest evangelists of the agile transformation. It just takes some time, and it just takes work with people. So we are all intrinsically motivated. We all need management theory why. That's a different way of managing. We don't need the carrots and sticks approach. We don't need controlling. We don't need arbitrary deadlines set. We don't need the carrot dangling in front of us. Yes, we want to be acknowledged for the great work we did. We want to have a bonus. We want to have a share of what the company makes. but we don't want that to be used to control our behavior. We want our autonomy. We want to do it ourselves and then be recognized, but not people trying to manipulate your behavior and tell you what to do, basically. That's not what we want. And many management systems today, many hierarchies do that. And because we talked about motivation, there is a nice way. Let me go into the presenter mode again. I think that's better. You don't have the clutter. The history of motivation. That's nice in Daniel Pink's book, the Drive. Drive, it's called. This is the... Daniel Pink basically calls that motivation 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0. 1.0 is just basic biology. It's what we thought animals would be. But there are studies that show that not even animals are just like that. So it's basically eat, sleep, reproduce. And everything else is just waste of energy, so try to avoid it. And this is what economy actually thought of human beings, just to be like that. And then the only way to make you do something else is to have the Homo economicus, the it's written very small here. The Homo economicus, that's basically the rational human being trying to maximize their own utility. And so you can use that drive to maximize their own utility by dangling a carrot or wielding a stick. But basically, this is how you control people's behavior. Thing is, people don't want to be controlled. And people have a different drive besides the biological drive and besides that economic drive. An even stronger one. I mean, not stronger than the biological ones, but stronger than the that Homo economicus drive, the carrots and sticks. And that's in motivation 3.0. That's the intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is what drives people. We want to do things. If you gave people, this is a discussion in society often, universal basic income or some equivalent, just give people money for nothing. The fear is often that people think this is how humans work. So if I get the money for free, I'm not going to do anything because I'm just going to lie on a beach sipping cocktails for the rest of my life. Imagine you lying on a beach sipping cocktails for the rest of your life. For most people, this sounds awesome at first. This sounds awesome for a few weeks, maybe a few months. It depends on who you are. For some people, it wouldn't even last a day. Like for me, I think I could last 2-3 days, but then no, they're probably not that long. And most people, frankly, wouldn't last too long lying on a beach, sipping cocktails, let alone doing that for the rest of your life. Because at a certain point, you will want to do something. You want to create, you want to do something useful. This is intrinsic motivation kicking in. We just can't not do something. We have to do something. It's horrible. It's the picture of hell, lying at the beach with a cocktail for every day for the rest of your life. We want to do things. And this is the intrinsic motivation that we actually have. And people will do things. People still do things, even if they have the money. If you think about all the billionaires, I talked about the most valuable companies, and all of them are agile. Like Microsoft, Apple, Google, Tesla, whatever. Do you think Elon Musk does it for the money? I don't know. Maybe some. I don't get into his brain, but maybe there's some weird way where they have a high score. Like, am I the richest person in the world, or is it Jeff Bezos, or is it Warren Buffett, or is it Bill Gates, or whoever's up there? The guy from the luxury brands. I forgot the name. But frankly, I don't think it is. For some people, it might be a numbers game, like a high score. It's not about the money anymore. But for most people, they do it for a different reason. They don't care if they are the richest or the 10th richest or second richest or whatever in the world. They have enough. The only thing they care is probably to have capital to do things, to create things. Not for themselves, but to just do stuff. And this just... It proves this image. It's not about the money or the threats. It's that intrinsic motivation. You can also look at children. I talked about that experiment a few times already. If you have children, you can do that on your own. As far as I know, it's not hurting children. As long as you don't overdo it, don't do it for years on end. But for example, my son loves to build Lego cars, these little Lego bricks, and building cars from that, or sometimes rockets and other stuff. So, and he does that. He builds these wonderful cars, and he spends hours to really design them and make it elaborate and create them. And there's no incentive other than the joy of doing it. And that's what intrinsic motivation is. It's the joy of just doing it. This is the reward. You don't need an extrinsic reward. You have yourself. It's you yourself. And the thing you do is the reward. But I can destroy that. And if you have a child, with my son, I can tell him, okay, from now on, you love to build Lego cars. And from now on, I'm going to give you something for each Lego car you build. But whatever your child wants, be it money or be it sweets or some other stuff they want, you're going to get some piece of it for every Lego car you build. And you know what will happen? What will happen is exactly what we expect from management theory X. It works. Huh? Yes, it works at first. It seems to work. The thing that, and let me...
Agile! Hostile!
Great. Let me switch back to to this. Yeah, thank you for your message from Milan. So I can see it now. This is great. I can finally see the chat messages. I cannot see them in the Discord though. I have to work on that. But I can see it here. That's already great. So the little experiment. When I incentivize my son to build these Lego cars, it will work. It will work. He will build more Lego cars in the same time. So, hey, dangling that carrot seems to work after all. But if you let that run for an hour or two or half a day, what you will notice is that while your child will build more Lego cars, the quality will suffer. Because your child will cut corners where possible to get that reward. Now it's not about building great and elaborate and beautiful Lego cars anymore, but it's just about a numbers game, getting that out to get the reward. It's more about the reward than about building the car. And this is what happens in companies as well, if they are managed like that. People cut corners. And that sometimes can go a long way, cutting corners to really immoral or illegal ways. We saw Lehman Brothers, we saw the whole collapse, the financial crisis. We saw Volkswagen, the diesel scandal, things like that. People put under pressure with the dangling carrot and the wielding stick. They cut corners, sometimes beyond the limits of law, and that can hurt the company badly. So, my son will produce more cars, but of worse quality. So what will I do as a standard manager? I will have checks in place. I will do a quality assurance. I will make sure that I put checks in place, that the car is actually assembled well, and that it actually has 4 wheels and not just 2 because it's faster to build now. Children can get creative. Flying cars suddenly. No, it has to have 4 cars. So I have to put all these checks in place. Sounds familiar when you look at companies, at your company maybe, or at your client's company? We put these checks in place. And then it might work. We will not get these beautiful, innovative cars anymore. At least I didn't get them. But I just got standard cars that fulfilled the quality assurance. The thing then was, after some time, the rate dropped. Like my son produced fewer cars or didn't want to produce any. So I had to increase the bonus that I gave him. So if I gave him €1 for every car before, and now I have to give 150 or 2. And I have to constantly increase that because after some time it will wear off. It's kind of like a drug addict where you have to increase the dose each time to get the same effect. Okay, the same dopamine rush. In fact, scientists found out that bonuses, incentivizing people like that, affects precisely the same regions in your brain that illegal drugs do, that these substances do. It works the same. It has the same effect. Okay. Luckily, it has not that physical damage that you get from some of these, but the psychological addiction is the same, and you need to increase the dose every time to get the same effect, or you will have a decrease in output. Sounds familiar for some of the companies, you know. And what will you do then? Manage more tightly, bring in external consultants to kind of fix them, and to or threaten to fire the 10% low performers, or increase the bonuses, or I don't know. All these are management type X management techniques. They assume that people are fundamentally lazy, and the only thing we can do is check on them, control them, threaten them, and incentivize them. And this is kind of like a spiral that goes on and on and on and on. And there's a different way to do this. Or before I tell you the different way, let's finish the experiment with my son. So at a certain point, I'm going to say, okay, this is not working. I'm just going to not give you anything for building the Lego cars anymore. Just go back to what you did before, where you built them for fun and they were nice and beautiful, and maybe you built not as many, but they were of greater value in some. And you know what will happen? What actually happens? If I drop the bonus and the incentive, my son will not build a single Lego car anymore. A thing he loved to do before, for hours on end, without any incentive, he suddenly now doesn't want to do anymore. It's no joy for him. We suddenly killed the intrinsic motivation by using extrinsic motivators. Now, we didn't actually kill the motivation, the intrinsic motivation. We buried it deep down. We buried it deep down in that person, in that child. And after some time, if I give my son a few days, and then he will forget about it, and he will start building Lego cars again for the fun of it, and he will enjoy it again. So this is why I say this experiment is not damaging to a child. If you do that for years on end, however, it could be damaging, Because the longer you are incentivized, extrinsically incentivized to do things, the more you will lose the joy and the motivation of doing it for its own sake. You will kind of forget why you actually started doing that in the first place. To some people, that actually sounds familiar when they think about their job. Got into that because you loved the topic and you loved the field, and now basically doing it for the money and the career and to feed the family. So that's actually dangerous to do it for years on end. And this is why I'm so worried about parts of our society today, or our society, where we have an education system that dangles carrots a lot and wheels stakes a lot in most countries. And then we have jobs and companies where people learn that behavior. And they forget their intrinsic motivation. The inner flame suddenly is buried deep down inside. But now we come as agile coaches, and we know, we have the understanding that everyone is intrinsically motivated. And there is a study that, if I have time, I get to that. And by the way, if I do not have time, let me show you this is where all this comes from and where I do much, much more. This is just an excerpt from one session of the 6-month program for Agile Coach Education. So if you're interested in that, you don't need to be an Agile coach. If you're an Agile practitioner, a Scrum Master, a manager, a leader, there's actually a lot more in there. What makes agility work? And the goal of this program is that you come out a totally transformed, different person that has the power to actually make agility work after that. If you're interested in that, the next group will start in April, May this year. So you can sign up now if you want to do that and dive deeper. And maybe we get to some more of the stuff of that one session today. This is kind of like a teaser almost. So, where was I? Yeah. When we can adopt that different view of a human being, that we understand people are intrinsically motivated. They don't need the carrot. Or actually the carrot is damaging if we dangle it in front of them. Then we can rethink our management methods. Suddenly, if people build bad quality cars, Lego cars, we see that the solution might not be more quality checks. Because people will check the quality themselves. Yes, we need quality checks, but not to check on the people, but the experts themselves should do these checks and should implement that. Like developers should do test-driven development because it's just in their profession. And the best developers in the world do this. They do it all the time. Not because someone tells them that, hey, you need to do that for quality and we're going to measure your performance on it. But they do it because it's their profession, it's their calling, it's what they want to do, and it's their pride in their profession. It's the mastery they're striving for. And then we can get rid of much of the management stuff that's present in companies today. If we just have a different view of the human being, if we understand them as intrinsically motivated and as wanting to do stuff, having good intentions, wanting to do stuff and not wanting to sneak out and get away and do as little as possible. Then we can get away with checks. We don't need to micromanage people. We don't need to dangle carrots in front of them to control their behavior because we can trust them. Trust is a big thing. We can trust them to do the right thing. We just, as a company, as an organization, we have to give them a clear goal or a mission, and then ask the experts who are doing the work, what do you need to make a meaningful progress towards that goal? And then give it to them, whatever they need. And then let them do the work. Let them decide. Let them do the quality checks. Let them do everything. And they will surprise you. They will surprise you. No management technique, no top-down management technique can ever compensate for what awesome people can do themselves. And awesome teams can do themselves. But to allow that thinking, we have to actually change our perception of how human beings work, of how motivation works. And that's the difficult thing that I think agile coaches do not emphasize enough. If you work with companies, if you especially work with leadership levels, with managers, then you have to help them reflect on their own management behavior, reflect on why they do it, what the view of the human being behind that is, and whether this is actually effective to what they want to achieve. Does it actually work? Spoiler, it mostly doesn't. Unless it's what I told you about the Lego cars, that initially the output will go up. Yes. And then you can come to a place where you use bonuses differently in a company. In a recent scientific paper, I read that bonuses are not inherently bad. They don't destroy intrinsic motivation, but if they are used to control your behavior, if someone tries to make you do a certain thing by dangling that carrot in front of you, it's not motivating. You're not going to do great work. You're not going to be high performing. But if that bonus is what the paper calls informational, the bonus is just there to acknowledge, to recognize what you did, to praise you, and to say, basically afterwards, to say, you did a great job. Here's part of the profit you made the company. And sometimes it doesn't even have to be monetary. It's fair. I think it should be fairly distributed. The employees should have a part of the profit they generate. But recognition can happen in different ways. It's just a recognition culture. I can remember my boss and mentor back when I worked in Silicon Valley. That is 20 years ago. Oh my God, 20 years ago. I worked in Silicon Valley, and my boss, when I did great work, he didn't promise me something in advance, but when I finished the project, he called me into his office and he said, here, thank you for your great work. And he gave me 2 tickets to a concert of the jazz drummer Roy Haynes at the Nob Hill Masonic Center in San Francisco. That was Roy Haynes' 80th birthday. He's still alive and kicking, that guy. I think he's going on 100 now. And he's still alive and playing concerts, as far as I know. So great jazz drummer. And the recognition wasn't in the monetary value of the tickets. The recognition was in that my boss actually showed interest in me as a person. He knew how much I loved music and jazz. And he went all the way to find out where there was a great concert, buying the tickets, and then giving them to me. And this didn't decrease my intrinsic motivation. It increased it. But it was an informational bonus. It wasn't made to manipulate my behavior. But most of the bonuses I see in companies today are not informational. They're controlling. They are meant to manipulate behavior. And people don't like that. I hate to break that to you, but people don't like to be manipulated. Okay? We like our autonomy. And that's actually a big part of Dan Pink's book Drive. That autonomy is an important pillar of motivation. Autonomy in how we work, when we work, with whom we work, and on what we work. the more autonomy we can give to teams and employees, the higher performing they will be, the more motivated they will be. And there are more pillars. Again, you can read the book, or that's also part of the Agile Coach Education Program if you want to get into that. So the thing then for us Agile coaches is, how can we help managers especially, but everyone in the company, understand and accept that new view of the human being? Because there is something that we have, and let me get back here. Oh, wait a second. Miro wants to update. Isn't that always they want? The software wants to update when you are doing this. There is one example, the fundamental attribution error. Or I heard people refer to it as a general attribution error. I don't know if that's a synonym but I know it as the fundamental attribution error. That's one example where you can see how a different view of the human being makes all the difference. And the fundamental attribution error states this. It says that a mistake or a non-favorable behavior, when we observe that, a mistake in another person, we tend to ascribe that to the person, to the character of the person itself. So if someone is late for the meeting, that's the example I tried to sketch here. That guy is late for the meeting, and everyone else thinks, oh, what a lazy guy, can't be on time, or this is just a disorganized person. Or sometimes even the person is not interested in the project or is sabotaging it. So it's all ascribed to the person and to the character. This is why they are late. While if we are late ourselves, we often say, usually I'm not late. Or if I'm late, I have a good reason because I'm late. In that case, hey, I met a colleague on the way in and they asked me to help them with the slides because I'm a slide wizard. And they asked me to help quickly to get that important presentation done for the company. So I took 10 minutes, sat with them, helped them fix their slides, and then came a little later to the meeting. Or sometimes it's more mundane. Sometimes we say, okay, there was a traffic jam, or today I had to bring the kid to school. Usually I don't on that day. So this is what happened. That's how we see ourselves. So when we make a mistake or are late, we attribute it to something outside of ourselves, to something in the environment. But if someone else is late, we attribute it to the person and their character. And of course, that cannot be true if everybody does that. So the shift we have to do is, in our view of the human being, it's assuming positive intent. API. A colleague of mine, Kimberly Weefling from Silicon Valley, calls it API. I think this is a great phrase. Assume positive intent. If someone is late to the meeting, assume that they didn't do it because they are lazy or disorganized. They did it because they had positive intent. They wanted to do something good. They helped an old person on the street and that took time. Or they helped a colleague finish the slides that are important for the company. So they decided themselves that there was something that created more value than being 5 minutes or 10 minutes earlier in the meeting. And once we make that shift, we can treat people differently. You will see the whole culture in a team or an organization shift when you do that, when you go to assuming positive intent. Someone makes a mistake. Oh, great, you tried to push the limits, you try to be innovative. Now go learn from it and try harder next time. Instead of just saying, oh, you made a mistake, or you're stupid. If you make a mistake again, you're going to be fired. No. Assuming positive intent in everything people do. And that's more important for agility than any agile framework ever can. And an important part, and no, I'm not going to get into the details about API, assuming positive intent. You can come to the Agile Coach Education if you're interested in that. Or just join more sessions and I might give more snippets of these. Let me hide that again. So how do we make managers understand this? Because I've met many, or not many, but several managers who refuse to accept that people have positive intent if they make mistakes. And that people will work if you do not set them tight deadlines, or if you check on them, or dangle a carrot in front of them. And the sad part here is, if we come in as agile coaches and we say, okay, stay away, don't micromanage people, leave them alone, you will see that it will work better. Then usually what happens, at least in my coaching practice over the last 20 years, mostly teams prove the view of the manager. They prove that agility doesn't work. They prove to the manager that they cannot be self-managing. And this is normal. Because they are so used to not going outside of their job description, not making mistakes, avoiding looking stupid, that once you allow them to do that, they don't trust that. They don't stick their heads out immediately because they know that it has been chopped off multiple times in the past. So even if you announce the new culture, it's not going to change anything immediately. It's like that caged animal that you had, a caged animal that you suddenly release into the wild. You open the cage and it will not run away. That's a paradox, or that's it looks crazy. That animal will not run away. It will not trust the new freedom. And it will have fear because it doesn't know that. It knows its cage. At least it knows its restriction and the bad and the good parts. But the wilderness outside, ooh, scary. It's new. It's unknown. So it takes time for that animal to adapt. And we are just biological creatures as well. So it takes time for us to adapt to that, to trust the situation, to kind of tap a foot and see, does it work if I go outside, if I make a mistake, if I'm okay with making mistakes and I take risks to be innovative and I make a mistake, will I be punished like I was in the past, or will it be okay this time? And then you have to work, as agile coaches, we have to work with managers to then applaud mistakes. This is difficult. To say, hey, you totally messed up. You made a decision and it was the wrong decision. Congratulations. It's hard to do. Luckily, we have agile frameworks and agile techniques that help us mitigate the blast radius of these mistakes, so that we can confine the blast radius. We can make the mistakes not hurt as bad as they would usually. There are many agile techniques that we can use for that, like short sprints, automated testing, continuous integration, all the nice stuff that I would love to get into, but it's not enough time today. So that can help. And then it's also important that leaders make mistakes. They make mistakes all the time, but in the past they learned that they have to look confident even in the face of complete uncertainty. Even if they don't know what they're doing, they have to look as if they are 100% convinced of that decision they made. But now it's time to show vulnerability, to go first in admitting mistakes to the rest of the company. And that's hard. I mean, that's just personally hard for someone. Especially if you learn to do it differently over the past decades. And this is where we coaches come in. This is where we have to go one-on-one with these people, help them reflect, help them understand what they do it for, that yes, it will hurt, but that we are at their side and we help them. They know what they do it for, and then they can take these small steps. And we can slowly create an environment of vulnerability and trust that gets us to high performance and to allowing intrinsic motivation to thrive. And to innovation, high performance, and all that to come following that. So that's a basic job, and I see that neglected in several agile transformation attempts, where it's mostly about frameworks and teaching people, getting them certifications and all this stuff, which is all not bad. But if that's the only thing you do, I expect not much to change. So we have to work with people in that one-on-one situation on vulnerability, on trust, and building that new culture, that new understanding, that new view of the human being. Okay, and now I see people dropping out, and I've been talking for an hour now. I think it's time to bring this to a close. I could talk more about the studies, the interesting studies that started in 1950, where scientists first found out about intrinsic motivation. I mean, intuitively we knew about that before, but these were the first studies. And it actually surprised scientists. It was done not with humans, but with animals, rhesus apes. And they showed intrinsic motivation, and they didn't know like how. What is this? What is this drive without getting a reward, without getting food or something like sugar water? They still do stuff and solve problems. Why? What's that drive? And they're so strong. And they then realized intrinsic motivation, and it seeped into business, administration, economics, but the first scientists who kind of tried to propose that and study that were kicked out of their universities, actually, because it wasn't accepted that people are not this homo economicus. People are not just trying to maximize their utility by getting money or getting incentives and trying to run away from pain and from threats. That's not how people work. That's not even how animals work. At least some animals. We don't know about all kinds of animals, but we know about rhesus apes. And decades later, they slowly accepted that view. And today, as I said, the most valuable companies in the world all embrace that in some form or another. That's how they work. And still, some other companies try to compete with them on money, on salary. You cannot compete with a company that's a $1 trillion company based on how much you pay people. But it's not the payment that keeps them there. Yes, payment has to be, it's a hygiene factor, it has to be fair, but it's not what makes people go up and get up in the morning and actually solve tough problems. It's the problems themselves and the environments in which they can solve it, the people around them with whom they can solve it. It's that intrinsic motivation that drives us. And understanding that is the crucial point for an agile transformation. And maybe in the next live sessions, we can get into a few techniques how we can actually get there. Because it's now nice to know what has to be there, but how do we make it appear in the real world? Maybe we can get into that. And as I said, this is just a small, tiny sliver of what Jens and me do in the Agile Coach Education Program. Jens Hilsensauer is a an insanely bright person, agile coach, with a deep background in psychology. So all the psychological techniques, he has such a deep understanding and can help people really change behavior to the better. So and unblock themselves basically. And that's amazing. I'm so happy to have him on board with the Agile Coach Education Program, because this is an important part of agile transformations, of how we do that. This is an important part of how you become a good agile coach or a good leader in an agile company. It's not just the frameworks. Yes, on the Agile Coach Education Program, we talk about the frameworks as well, of course, but I don't want to go through all the basics of the frameworks. Unless somebody really says, I never heard about that framework and I want to really learn that, we will do that as well. But the focus is more on the next step after that. Okay, what do we do with these frameworks? Why do they work? Do we even need them? And what are the more important mechanics besides the frameworks that make it work? Like the view of the human being, like how do we coach people, motivation, psychology, behavioral science, that we understand that. And then get into techniques, specific hands-on techniques, how we can make that work. How do you create trust in a team? Where do you start? How do you resolve conflict in a team? Or is conflict even bad all the time? Hint, it is not. Lack of conflict is actually or fear of conflict is one of the 5 dysfunctions of a team. So interesting stories about that. But again, there's so much in the Agile Coach Education Program. It's 1 session a week, every night, 1 session for 6 months. And we have a monthly weekend session. So you can comfortably do that beside your job. You have to be committed though, because there's also some stuff that you will develop, like an own talk for a conference or for clients, that we will develop together. But it's totally doable for a normal job. This is what the people last year did. They did it just besides their regular job, and it's 1 evening session a week, and it's one weekend session a month. And that's totally doable. And this is why it's stretched out over 6 months, so that you can comfortably do it next to the job instead of just doing it in a block of, 3 or 4 weeks. That would be prohibitive for most people. So if you're interested, check it out. If you have questions, just hit me up on LinkedIn or something and just ask questions. And I'm happy to talk more about this stuff and give you sneak peeks about how agility truly works, or how I have seen it truly work. I've only seen a small sliver of the world. I mean, I've worked in the US and Europe, and also with Japanese companies, global leaders actually, but still I have only seen a small part of the world. In that small part, I found out what in that part always makes agility work, or what blocks it from working. And this is what I want to pass on to people, so that more people can help companies be successful on that journey to agility. And with that, thank you all for tuning in today, for listening for more than an hour, watching this. It's awesome. Thank you for testing the comments. I hope I got all the comments, because I only got 1. So next time also feel free to put questions or your opinion in the chat, so that I can react to that. And then I see you next time. I think this time that I improved the technology here of these lives even more. And I even have an outro with music. So I'll say goodbye and see you next time in the next live session. Bye. No music though. I have to work on that. Thank you.